We're live!
Hey, we're back, everyone, and we're going to be going over the player-created content, as we mentioned, and we got a lot of repeats this week, stuff that players submitted earlier and have gone back after kind of hearing some of the feedback and taking new stabs at it. A lot of cool stuff today, Jeremy.
Yeah, so let's dive right into the very first thing we see, and that is Dude Man has shared. And for those, just before I dive into it, I gotta do this, guys. Remember, if you want to be a part of this awesome community where we create homebrew content, we give each other feedback, and we help to kind of grow together as creators for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, or just players who want to play with some awesome, cool content that doesn't exist in the game yet. You can go join our community. You can get there by going to dndtime.stream #Discord. That'll bring you right to our Discord server. Come join us, share your ideas, take part in our community, and yeah, be part of this. It's a lot of fun. Like, it's a ton of fun. So do that. First thing this week is from Dude Man. We had Dude Man on last week, Pete, right?
Yes, Dude Man braved the Lich's lair and came out the other side looking pretty well. I mean, captured by the Liches, of course.
Soul devoured, of course.
Soul devoured still, which is essentially where we go through and give something a very in-depth look with our rubric, taking some extra time to really fine-tooth comb and critique every aspect of it, which if you're interested in trying that out sometime, you can message me and I can give you some more details about that.
Absolutely.
He put out the Path of the Totem Warrior, the Shark Totem, which was a really cool totem option for the Path of the Totem Warrior Barbarian subclass. So it's kind of a subclass in a sense. And it was the Shark Totem, which we thought really crushed it on in particular the space. I was shocked that there wasn't already some kind of aquatic totem for barbarians of the Spirit Totem. So.
Yeah, so again, this is for the Path of the Totem Warrior, an existing subclass. This is kind of like a subclass. And one of the things Dude Man said when he was sharing this last week was he wanted to do this because he saw, I think it was V-Bunny 23 on Lich's Lair, and said, man, V-Bunny made this awesome thing. I want to create an awesome thing too, and decided this is, a pretty straightforward thing. There's not an aquatic option like Pete said. I'm going to go for it. And so he went with the Shark Totem. Barbarians of the Shark Totem. Your totem can be many things, from a literal shark fin to a shark tooth necklace. At your option, you may also gain minor physical attributes that are reminiscent of the shark. And then the different features: totemic spirit, shark teeth. Starting at 3rd level, while raging, you gain a special unarmed attack, unarmed strike attack. It is a bite attack that does 1d12 plus your strength modifier piercing damage. This bite has a critical range of 19 through 20. The damage of this bite counts as magical for purposes of overcoming non-magical resistances and immunities, and the spirit of the shark turns into a predator that can pierce any hide. Very cool.
Yep, absolutely. These are a lot of the changes we discussed, which was it's gone to the flat D12, which I think is the right choice. Since we're at a point now, I think this is at a point where we can get this nitty-gritty, which is maybe a sign that this might be the first truly completed work that we've seen so far, Jeremy. The S in strength should be capitalized, because that's what you do for when we're starting to talk about formatting. You're in a good spot, but the S in strength should be capitalized.
There's also a minor other note, and that is, we talked a little bit about this before, whether to use natural weapon or unarmed strike. It is a special unarmed strike using your natural weapon.
Yep, yeah, that's a point that you will want to go back and look at.
The phrasing you want to use to get what you're going for. So that if you're a paladin cross class or something, you can smite on this kind of stuff. And if you're a monk cross class, you can use your monk features with your cool bite. Otherwise,
additionally, I was just going to say the damage of this bite counts as magical for the purposes of overcoming non-magical resistances and immunities. I think you can just say the damage of this bite counts as magical for the purposes of overcoming resistances and immunities. And then you might need to say to non-magical damage, but I know the phrasing of non-magical doesn't go in front of resistances and immunities. Again, you can tell you're in a good place with this is that fine.
Yeah, we're just guessing at that on that. I don't actually know if that's correct, because this might actually be the right language here.
That is the correct one?
Well, either way, what you'd probably do, look at gosh, what class has that? Oh, the monk, actually. Go look at the monk and what they get at their 6th level feature. And that should help to clarify that. Actually, I've got it open right here.
To non-magical attacks and damage. So yeah. It is after. So as I was saying.
Yeah. But otherwise, that's minutia at that point. Awesome feature. I like that instead of giving you a bonus action attack like a lot of other totems would give you, like for example, or a lot of other barbarian subclasses would give you,
With
right?
the
Like Path
Frenzy.
of Berserker, or the Battle Rager, right? This one gives you just the
A better
option
attack.
to use a better attack, which I think is cooler in a lot of ways.
I agree.
Also, you can use your D12 weapon and wield a shield, which is just neat.
Yep, all of this works. And let's talk about the next feature, Aspect of the Beast, Underwater Predator. You gain the speed, starting at 6th level, you gain the speed and underwater capability of a shark. You have a swimming speed equal to your movement speed. You can also now breathe underwater. I might combine those two sentences to you gain a swimming speed equal to your movement speed and you can breathe underwater, but that's an okay way to do it is that you have it, and this feature I have no issues with.
Yeah, absolutely. Great feature. Very fitting for a 6th level feature. You need to be able to use this underwater stuff early, so I like that it's there. It's relatively early in the class.
Yep, I know you remove the blind sight that you originally gave at this point, and that is the right move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
and
at
it's
14th.
not a good spot. Yeah.
At 14th level, you get Blood Frenzy. This is a feature that Pete and I thought was pretty much ready anyway, but you took one of our suggestions, actually, so you put it together. While raging, you have advantage on melee attack rolls against any creature that is less than their maximum hit points. This is a feature that all of the shark monsters have, and it's just kind of an upgrade on your reckless attack that a barbarian already would have. So I think this is a really cool feature, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
It's in a good spot, Jeremy. I think that this is in a spot now where this could be truly Wizards of the Coast published content.
Yeah, I absolutely think that, obviously in the formatting of the book, it'd be a little different, but I think this content is quite good. I think we're there. Looking at our rubric, which of course I have closed like a fool. What does this get, right?
Yeah.
Our rubric, it has space. There's space for this, definitely. It is well balanced. There's no playability issues here. The design is elegant and straightforward, and it is defensible for the flavor, right? The design reflects the flavor, and the flavor is great. Underwater creatures, shark is the underwater creature for the most part. You can make an octopus totem, but like a little funky.
The only thing that I could possibly discuss is the playability of giving magic damage at 3rd level, which is maybe a little bit outside of convention, but I think it is justified. But I think it is justified by the design to do it that way and the limitations of the shark totem. So I wouldn't actually dock at that point, or I would also maybe say, well, it gets 2 for design and then it cancels out. Either way,
I would agree.
I think it works, but that's the only
part of the power, right, of your feature doesn't give you anything extra. It just gives you a different thing that is more powerful. And I think that that design leaves room for that magical damage, especially at earlier levels. So I'm loving it. Very cool.
Great job, dude, man. Congratulations on it. I would say, I know there's, like I said, there's some tiny phrasing things that you could clean up here, but I'd say that this is done. Great job, dude, man.
I would agree. And Sword Killer, you're saying just look out for those bronze dragons. They do love some sharks. Oh boy. I guess be careful not to get eaten by bronze dragons. But yeah, thank you so much again for sharing, dude, man. And thank you for taking the time to make these revisions. Part of what we're doing here and giving our feedback is we want to see, week over week improvements based on, the kind of stuff we've talked about, right? We want to see these things kind of reflected in what you guys are doing. And this is a really awesome example of that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, great job. That's going to move us next. We're going to have the Warforged variants by Cherry here.
And Cherry, right on time.
Yeah, Razia, you are in perfect timing. Welcome. We're just going over your thing right now. These are alternative. These are alternative options for the Warforged race, rather than the kind of general-based chassis, which is, I think, a very interesting idea here. But these are sub races. One thing to be noted, I assume that these are references to the earlier version of the Warforged and not the most up to date, because if I'm not mistaken, the most recent Warforged is just one all-purpose Warforged, is it not?
Yes, the newest published Warforged in the Eberron Rising from the Last War is a singular race. It doesn't have any sub races or anything of that nature, like maybe we saw in previous Unearthed Arcana or in the Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron book that was released on the DM's Guild as a kind of, for those of you who can't wait for Eberron, here's the thing you can have content. But yeah, so this is going to be a little funky. I'm wondering how this would fit in with the Warforged race as it kind of exists currently.
The place that it seems to make the most sense to me, because to overview what this is going to be, we won't go into all the details of the flavor here, but there were 4 different types of Warforged options here for different segments, representing different segments of the way, like, for example, we arrange the military in America here, or I think most militaries are arranged in this way, with a Navy, a Marines, an Air Force, and an Army. And this has a different feature depending on which branch of those Warforges that you were made for. And there's some cool mechanics in these. One thing that's throwing me off, Razia, if you could clear some intention up on this, is that I don't know where these features are intended to go on the Warforged chassis. I don't know if these are replacing like a specific feature or the whole, like, I just don't know where they're intended to go.
Yeah, I think the idea behind these is this is just a little extra you would get if you were playing a Warforged. And I'm just going to keep going with the assumption of that for now.
Okay,
so
that's an interesting idea. Sure.
Let's look at what they've got here. So Navy, you gain an increased swim speed equal to half your movement speed, as well as cannot gain advantage on either attack or saving throws submerged in water. You must choose either attack or saving throws. So I think the idea behind this, because again, you need to work a little bit on the phrasing of this stuff, because for me, I know it's very hard to understand what you were going for there. But I think the idea, what we're going for, is that your swim speed increases by half your speed, so just is your speed for all intents and purposes. And that while swimming, you can either not have advantage on your attack rolls, so I guess that goes to the underwater combat rules where certain weapons have disadvantage. I don't understand the saving throws part, unless I'm just not sure I get that one.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, maybe the idea is you can dodge bullets and stuff in water, like, for example, or I'm just saying bullets, like if if someone casts a fireball, you don't have disadvantage on the dex save because you're swimming. I don't know if you would anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't quite resonate for me either.
Yeah, from a design perspective, tacking stuff onto an existing race, just throwing it on, is not really how sub races work. Sub races generally there's a give and take, where the sub race kind of like all the sub races are different, and because the Warforged doesn't have sub races built in, it would be like instead of integrated protection, you have this feature, right? Or instead of Sentry's Rest, you have these, That being said, I think a swim speed and you don't have disadvantage on your attacks underwater, that almost sounds like a background for a Warforged. This almost feels like, rather than a sub race, that's a feature that like is a Warforged specific background, right? You were built as a Navy soldier.
Yeah. Well,
and I think that's very cool.
Yeah, it definitely touches on the background. You couldn't put a feature, for example, like having swim speed and not disadvantage on a background, so you would have to make it a sub race if you're going to do
I think you could do that. Why wouldn't you? It's definitely against convention is too powerful, but
great convention. I don't know. I am reticent to put anything extra on any backgrounds, just like because you know how much think about how much we don't like those spells on the other ones, and now we're talking like a whole feature. I don't know. I'm a little bit reticent, but yeah.
I think it can go either way. I mean, I think it depends. The big thing is this is something that clearly is designed for a specific homebrew game, right? Where we have these specific concepts of the Warforged battling. Maybe this could be used in Eberron, but I'm not familiar enough with the lore of Eberron to say how these would fit into that world. But let's keep going. Look at the Marine.
Yeah, the Marine here, it's built to handle ranged enemies, which I'm not sure if I fully see the connection. I don't know much about the Marines, also. I don't know the details of it. So maybe long range makes sense. But attacking at long range doesn't impose disadvantage on ranged attack rolls. And you gain the Elorat feat. I'm not sure what that was. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. You gain a climb speed of 30 feet and ignore difficult terrain when climbing. So you can climb and you're better at a range. Climbing up in trees and stuff seems to be the play style for this here. There's the Air Force one, which you gain a fly speed equal to half your move speed. That makes a lot of sense. You can fly a number of times equal to your dex modifier after a long rest, and you can fly for your proficiency plus dex modifier minutes. You also gain disadvantage on stealth checks when flying due to your loud metallic wings, is I think what that's meant to say there.
I want to take a quick minute before we move past that. I actually really like that, like as a concept for, because giving a race a fly speed is incredibly powerful. Putting, I know magic items like the winged boots have a minute's timer there, and maybe that's something you were looking at, Razia, when you were building this. But I really like the idea of incorporating that into a race option. Say, hey, you have flight, but it has these substantial limits. I think that's a really cool way to do it without breaking the curve like a lot of other flying races like the Aarakocra have done in the past. So I like that a lot.
I agree. I think that's a great mechanical idea and a way to balance flight a little bit better. It also makes a lot of sense for a Warforged where the flight seems to be like, I'm imagining it sort of almost as like jetpacks that are running out of fuel, which definitely fits the vibe. And last, the army, you gain advantage on attacks of opportunity, and you also gain a reach of 10 feet with melee weapons.
That's very powerful.
Yep, that's very strong. And then you have some stuff down here. I saw you said in the thing, the gun down there is out of place, so we can look at that later. That's just another thing here. But this is the core thing of the Warforged branches, are these 4 features.
Yeah. I think overall, you know, there needs to be a little bit more of a distinction of like, if you wanted this to be, so I guess this is the question, right? Homebrew that's created to share with other people with the idea of other people using it versus homebrew made for your own games.
Well, Razia actually has an interesting comment exactly about that, which is that they ran a small game for their father's friends, who was a veteran as well as his friends, and he really wanted to play the branch of the military they were in. It's a little short notice, so I made that up, but I just needed a little input. That's
in
a really
that context,
cool thing to do.
I think this is perfect. I don't think you have to worry about balancing these too much when you're talking about like a specific single use case. If you wanted to design these for like a wider scale, like broad use, like you're making an expansion for Eberron that was like a military campaign, that would be cool, but I think it would need a little, these would definitely need some polish and some detail. But I think for this purpose, I think that's great. And actually, I'd love, folks, in the future, if you could tell us the use case that you're planning on using your homebrew for.
That's a great idea.
That would help us immensely in giving you helpful feedback. Because, like we were saying, all right, this doesn't meet the convention of Warforged sub-races, like we were talking about earlier. That doesn't matter at all for the case that you're using it for. So,
yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So everyone keep that in mind. Moving forward.
Please do give us context if you can.
And also, Rosie, just on the subject, we were talking about this earlier because I know you weren't here earlier. We're running out of time in a lot of weeks to do stuff, and I know you put together huge packets of content that we'll just never have time to do on the show, all of, especially with so many people to get to each week. So one thing, Rosie, I would love to see some more content that is like this, which is a little bit more dense, like this was very attainable for us to be able to go over in this time slot. But I also love to see you take some time and go back and go over some of the ones that we've already done. I know we had a lot of people doing that tonight, and it's been nice to see some of the improvements. But I think that it would be well served to really go at some of the things that we've pointed out in the past. So maybe this is the first Fantasy Labs patented homework assignment, which is for you, Razia. I would love to see you go back and redo some of the ones that we've already discussed with you and see how you make it a second time through with maybe a little bit more polish.
Absolutely. Making quality stuff, like when Pete and I showed our genie earlier, I've looked at that. I spent hours on that genie. It might not look like I spent hours on that. I spent hours on that genie. I've gone through that. I've read through it probably 100 times, making sure that my phrasing is accurate and that there's not little gaps where, for example, like in what we just looked at for Matt Mercer's guy, right, with the Matt Mercer's spell with the immovable object, right, that can't be held or carried. obviously, you know, that was something that if you'd spent more time going back and looking at different spells that affect objects, you would have seen that a mile away. But that's something that obviously was missed in the review process. And that's something that, you know, that's how you really make really polished content, is by taking the time to go through and do all that kind of stuff. And obviously, I don't expect you guys to go to 100 things.
Oh yeah,
you know,
no, God no.
that's not what we're asking. It's just, you know, take another pass at something once you've gotten our feedback on it, guys. And we want to see those revisions. We want to see what Dude Man did earlier, seeing like where, and I think what we're going to see with Frog's item in or Pixie sub race in a minute, where, right, our feedback really helped, and where maybe where it didn't too, because sometimes Pete and I think something, at least I'm going to say I try and say something, but then when I do, I just blah, and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
so let us know.
Give us feedback on our feedback.
Yeah, do you understand what we're saying? Has it been helpful? And yeah, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But Rosie was saying, yes, I do go back and redo them, but once I redo them, I normally go through another round of play tests just in case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a good process for it. But I would love to see some of those redone ones at some point.
Playtest is the best.
Yes, I never playtest anything because I just don't play enough. I just never have time.
I've been playtesting my actually I say my and After's Ranger talents for quite a while now. I think the talents are in a good place, but the thing that I added, the predatory focus, is not. So I need to make some revisions, and even then the talents could use a little bit more oomph. I think being able to switch them out more frequently could be cool, and maybe if we give them a new kind of tone. But anyway, well, I've got some more thoughts on those, and you'll see some more stuff on those in the future. Let's keep going, Pete. Let's jump on to the next guy here. What are we talking about next?
Yes, we're going to be talking about that Pixie sub race.
Okay, we're going to come back to these conditions and quirks later if we got time.
Yeah, that'll be a time. Actually, you know what? No, let's do those right now. I think we can well through, because I don't think we'll have time to go through all of them anyway. But I would just like to point out, I just wanted to highlight this idea I mentioned last week. I wanted to go back because I thought this was a really cool idea, which was basically just adding more quirks. Not quirks, more status condition. The quirks, I'm not quite as sold on. That seems like a campaign-dependent thing, but more status conditions is something that I think the game could really benefit from, because it gets a little boring when every spell does either blinded or paralyzed or stunned or deafened.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of conditions in 5e. Frightened comes up way more than it ought to when there's so many different versions of Frightened, and some of those are here. Like there's an idea here called Hopelessness, which reduces your speed by half. You attack with disadvantage, and you make death saves with disadvantage, which is a very interesting idea of just you've been hit with hopelessness. There's an idea.
Oh my gosh, that feels so much like Darkest Dungeon. If you've ever played that game, guys, it's just, oh, your resolve is tested. Hopelessness. Oh no.
I like there's Fragile here. Their movement is halved, and they have a -2 to armor class. Like they're kind of been battered, and they're starting to be weakened, which just seems like something that might happen to an enemy in a game, is kind of the implication. But I could picture that as just another status condition on the list. Like you're a little bit easier to hit because you've been made fragile by whatever happens. And also I like that you put the little what save it's normally going to be against. So for example, for Fragile, roll Constitution to resist. So most things that would inflict Fragile would be Constitution saves, which I think is a good thing to point out for these. So Hopelessness would be rolling your Wisdom to resist it. Honestly, that might even feel like a Charisma thing to me. And then there's some positive ones too. Some of these mechanics are maybe a little bit too gamey for me, but there's some here that I think could work really well. Like Hopelessness was one that felt really cool to me in particular. But I just wanted to point that out. It's a cool direction where... Oh
yeah, like Bravery here, +2 to hit and your improved critical, which I guess maybe your crit range is increased.
Very cool. Immune to fear. Definitely taking that from the... from like the heroism spell, which is the right thing to take it from. Because heroism does almost feel like a condition, because there's other stuff that talks about heroism as an idea and then gives immunity to fear. But yeah, there's just a lot of cool stuff here. I like. There's one that's full. That's cool.
Yeah, you had an option for stress up here, and I think there's actually optional rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide for stress. So I'm wondering how similar these are. Rosie, let me know how you feel. But either way, there's a lot of really cool ideas. And like Pete was saying, this is the kind of stuff that as other creators, these are definitely in a draft, playtest hash out kind of condition here. So we can't really give a lot of particular feedback right now. But it'd be awesome to see where other people looked at these and were inspired, right? Or how these were further implemented in a game. So.
And that is exactly the thing that I wanted to get across, was that, like, if you like these, then this is just a cool thing that you could make up in more detail and have be a cool part of 5e if you made it yourself. So let's take a look at that pixie.
Oh, even just like hungry, like very good. Oh, that gives so much more oomph to certain survival games. Oh, I love that. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's jump onto the pixie now. Thank you so much again for sharing, Razia.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's look at this beautiful, our beautiful D&D format. Oh, Frog!
Oh my goodness, it looks gorgeous.
Frog. It's beautiful.
We have a lot to go through, so I'm not going to read all the flavor, but I am going to read your quote because I love quotes. And this quote is, "On sylvan wings of moonlight gleam, tricksters from one's midsummer dream. Their friend and fiend, and in between, those pixies that have enchanted me, an elven explorer." A nice little poem. I don't know if you made that yourself, Frog, but it's very cute. And we have some ideas about pixies. Frog's flavor was already crushing it always, so I know that your flavor's still going to be there. I like your pixie names. You got your Sugar and Jingle and Daisy, but of course you had to have Sugar in the mix. But let's start looking at some of the mechanics of the pixie here, Jeremy.
Yeah, and again, for those also checking this out, just reading the flavor, which we don't have time to read over everything now, but just going back and doing that, so much inspiration just oozing out of here. Like,
absolutely,
you'd be doing yourself a disservice not to check it out at some point. Let's see, your dexterity and charisma scores increased by 1. Nice, a nice tame little increase, definitely leaving some space for sub-races.
Agreed.
Age, again, that's just normal
immune to
stuff.
magical aging effects, a minor boon, automatic.
I love that. Very cool addition. Almost all places are good and chaotic. Yep, of course. Due to the splendid magical environments. Okay. This is just saying why they are small creatures instead of tiny. I love it. Excellent.
This is one thing I wanted to point out, which will be coming up in Sword's piece here. But Sword went through and did sort of like patch notes where he's like, "Here's what we talked about, and here's what I did." I don't expect you to do this on this polished version, but if you leave notes in workshop and stuff too, because it's a little hard for us to remember where some stuff was, we can. So for this, I'm kind of evaluating it just as I'm rereading it again here. But yeah, some of it's familiar, but that was super helpful. So other people who want to take the time to do that as well, that will make it easier for us to review stuff. So I'm reminded of that now as we're going through. But let's keep going.
Yeah, speed, 25 feet of flying, 25 feet of walking. It's a lot of flying speed. That's going to take up a lot of the power of this. Altered Fae. You may have been born as a Fae, but the magics you've accumulated have some unseen effects. Your creature type is Fae rather than humanoid. Enchantment spells and magical effects that specifically target humanoids can still target you. Great. Oh, Frog. Beautiful. Well done.
That is really nicely done.
Very well done. Yeah.
I'm with you. It's great. Also, Frog mentioned that he wanted us to full rubric him right now. So,
Frog, you wanted to full rubric you. Jeez. All right. Attuned to nature. Well, in that case, Frog, do you want this to be like a Lich's Lair for next week?
We could do that if you want.
I guess we can't do. It wouldn't be next week. It would be 2 weeks from now.
Since we could stop here and we could really Lich's Lair this thing and go deep. If you're still here.
Yeah, let us know if that's what you want us to do. Because if so, we'll just move on to the next guy for now, and we'll take a swing at this. I'm excited. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, Frog wants down on that. Yeah,
absolutely.
We can go through because there's a lot here, and I'd love to take the time to really give it all the
absolutely.
Deserves, so,
especially since, and I just want to say, I really appreciate that you went through and prettied it up and took that effort, because it means like you really care about your own content, and like that's why I do it for our stuff, and for why Pete also does it for his stuff, and why we do it for our things is we really love our content, and we want to present our content in a way that makes people see it and go, wow, that looks good on top of everything else.
On top of it works. It feels like real content, which there's something, if you've never done anything in the cool formatting before, there's something so satisfying about seeing your work in that formatting that like I wouldn't have thought until I actually started using the right formatting, and it's really good. But
Right,
I'm actually really excited. So Frog, so far you're passing the rubric, but we'll go over it in full Lich's Lair next week or 2 weeks from today. Get excited for that, everyone. There will be a Lich's Lair.
I don't know why I keep doing that, like, want to be a millionaire thing for that, but that's kind of how I feel. Anyway, thank you again, Frog, and I'm very excited seeing you on Lich's Lair.
We have a couple
Howling
of spells.
Shot.
Yeah, from Blood Deuce here. These are both pretty cool. These are almost like a ranged version of like a Green Flame Blade.
Inspired by Green Flame and Booming Blade. Yeah. As part of the action used to cast, so this is called Howling Shot. As part of the action used to cast this spell, you must make a ranged attack with a weapon against one creature within that weapon's range. Otherwise, the spell fails. On a hit, the target suffers the attack's normal effects, and you may push the target 5 feet, as it was blasted by Arcane Wind. Additionally, if the attack was made beyond the normal range of the chosen weapon, but within the maximum range, the target takes 1d6 thunder damage. The spell's damage increases when you reach higher levels. At 5th level, the attack deals an extra 1d6 thunder damage, and the extra damage and the damage the target takes when the attack is made beyond the normal range, but within the maximum range, increases to 2d6. Both damage rolls increase by 1d6 at 11th level and 17th level. And here's an attempt at a fun Sword Coast style cantrip for bow and crossbow users, which Arcing Shot, and we'll get to that in a minute. What do you think about Howling Shot, Pete?
I think it's interesting. For one, I really love the core concept of Howling Shot, which is a bow-based shot. Bow-based Green Flame Blade. I think that's a great idea. I think the knockback's cool. Personally, the direction I would have gone with this would have been to make the knockback on a save and to almost like to make the thunder damage and knockback a save and not have it be this thing where if you're in the maximum range, it does it. Because that makes I don't know, I just don't understand the reason for that particular implementation of it, where if it's in that maximum range thing.
Right, the idea is because it's flying through the air for longer, right, it's almost picking up this arcane speed. Like, I actually do get that. It's a funky mechanic, and it might just be referencing something a bit too obscure. Actually, here's my big one, right? If you're attacking at long range, you're attacking at disadvantage, right? That's generally the mechanic, unless there is a feature that like
negates that.
And so basically, this is a cantrip that you're only getting one attack anyway. This is your action for the turn. You're gambling with your only thing. I think just the design of that might feel like that's where we hit maybe a playability issue of it might feel bad to use. But I think the mechanics of it are actually pretty sound. Like from a design mechanical perspective, I think it works. Even from a flavor perspective, I think it works. I don't want to put a save on it, but I guess it could have a save.
I personally, the direction I would have gone with this, that would have made it work for me, is if the thunder damage and knockback were just a con save.
Yeah, I mean, that could work.
Which that would have hit me, but
I will say it's a very, very cool feature.
Yeah,
I like this a lot.
It works as it is.
I think this is a very valuable addition to the game.
Agreed. Again, another thing I was surprised doesn't already exist when I read it. Intention also was for the classes that could use this, it would be an Artificer, Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard.
I wonder if there's a reason it's thunder damage. I mean, I kind of get it for Howling, but it's almost like Booming Blade already exists. It's almost like, is there a way this could be something else besides thunder? Because it's already thunder, and there's already a thing for it, but I don't know.
Howling, the sound kind of is evoked a bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Arcane Shot. That's the next one. I think that's a well put together spell, and it's almost ready to go. It's just like I have a personal thing where I think it could be changed a bit, but I think it's in a good spot. Mind if I take Arcane Shot here?
Please.
Evocation cantrip, one action, and the same kind of range on it. As part of the action used to cast a spell, you can make a ranged attack with a weapon against one creature that's within the weapon's range. Otherwise, the spell fails. On a hit, the target suffers the attack's normal effects, and electricity jolts from the target to a different creature of your choice within 5 feet from it. The second creature takes lightning damage equal to your spell casting ability modifier. The spell's damage increases when you reach higher levels. At 5th level, the ranged attack deals an extra 1d6, and the lightning damage to the second creature increases to 1d6 plus your spellcasting modifier. Both rolls increase by 1d6 at 11th level and 17th level. Is that the way that Green Flame Blade does it?
Yeah, this is effectively Green Flame Blade, but extrapolated for a ranged effect. I think from a design perspective, it's spot on. Except there's the one flavor aspect of the base attack not doing any lightning damage, but the second one doing but the bounce doing lightning. I think the way I would do this, and it definitely breaks convention, is I just make, instead of the attack's normal effects, I just make the attack do lightning damage personally. But that's not how for Green Flame Blade works, but that's how I would do it. I like it. It's very cool, very well written.
Is Green Flame Blade a D8? Or is it a D6?
I think it's a D6.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident. I'd have to check.
I haven't used that spell. You've used it more than me, so
I've used it a lot, and I don't know.
Do you think the nature of the fact that it's a ranged attack makes it more powerful? Because I think it does to a certain
extent. It is a D8. Green Flame is a D8, so
okay,
it is.
That's where I thought I wanted it to be weaker than Green Flame, which it is. So I think that's the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, this is perfect. Like, this could lock it, print it, done.
Yeah,
perfect.
Well
and
done.
I understand now why this is thunder. This is thunder and lightning. Cool.
Okay.
Plus, howling has to be fucking thunder, doesn't it? So.
Yeah, I guess. I liked it originally. So we have the Interstellar Helm here from Sword Co. here. This is take 2. He mentioned here at the end, there are these little notes that are, here's what has changed since we talked about it, or since you talked about it last. So let's do this. It is a helmet created from non-metallic element taken from a shooting star. When worn, players gain a +1 AC. Advantage on resisting charm spells and advantage on con save. The player can use an action to perform one of the following spells, but other active helmet effects must be dismissed. So you said you cleaned up the language a little bit. Since we're at this point, and this is starting to get to a really good place, I'll do a couple of quick notes on further cleanups you could do here. So instead of when worn, players gain 1 AC, you'd want to say when worn, players gain a +1 bonus to their do they go out the full armor class?
It'd say you gain a +1 bonus to your armor class while you wear this helm.
Yes, that would be correct.
Additionally, you gain advantage on saving throws to resist the effects of charm. Right.
And advantage on Constitution saving
throws.
Would be the correct way to phrase all of that.
And again, the best place to look at this is, you're saying it +1 to AC, look up shield +1 AC, or check it out in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And that's a perfect reference because it's going to say exactly what you want.
Yep.
Always good to take the stuff that already exists and just take the language. It's right there.
For advantage on resisting charm effects, you can look at the elven races because they have a feature that does that.
Halflings have Grave as well, which could help for similar, I think it's fear effects, but same exact idea.
And for the advantage on con saves, you could borrow it from Warcaster, might be a good one because those have ones for concentration, which is a little bit more specific, but you could borrow the language there.
But overall, I totally get where you're going from here, and I like it. The word dismissed is a little against convention, but I think it works. Like, I think it's okay because it's clear to me that if you're using effect, all the other, whatever other effect is going on stops. So I don't think there's actually a problem there.
It is clear. A thing that you could do would maybe be like dismissed and then be like, you can dismiss them on your turn, no action required, would be like a way to do it, maybe a little bit more in.
Really interesting. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, I'm good. Go ahead.
I was saying, really interesting comment from V-Bunny. None of the items' abilities say you must be attuned to the helm in order to use the helm's benefits. I think that is an issue. Actually, I don't think you need that, V-Bunny. A lot of very early Magic items do have that stipulation in there, but newer items that have come out don't have it. And that's because even in the original items, that was kind of helper text, because the rules for attunement say if an item has attunement, you cannot use its features or benefit from its abilities unless you're attuned to it. So because the rules for attunement exist as a core rule in the game, you actually don't have to include it if you don't want to. Especially in an item like this with a lot of text, we don't want to add any superfluous.
When worn is the important phrase, because you do have to specify that you can't just have the helmet under your arm, it does have to be on your head.
Exactly, and that's just for the idea of, well, I have 6 magical helms that I'm attuned to, and I'm not wearing them. I'm just carrying them. I
You
got my
got me.
necklace of helmets.
So next one here, we have Grace of the Stars. Call upon the stars to bless a player or companion other than yourself for 1 minute. Whenever a player uses an attack roll or saving throw, they can roll 1d8 and add the number to the attack roll or saving throw. This ability cannot be used again until the next dawn. So you change the language to resemble bless, and that shows this is in a really good spot.
Yeah, and it has its duration on there. I mean, pretty spot on. I think maybe you call upon the stars to bless a player.
Yes.
That's all I got. Otherwise, pretty spot on.
Lowercase b on bless.
Yes. Yep. Bless needs to be a lowercase b. But I mean, come on, right? Like,
yeah, I mean,
at that point we're nitpicking.
Well, this is where
excellent.
again, this is a good sign when we're doing that degree of detail.
Stardust.
Yes.
You magically scatter stardust in the air, creating a 10-foot sphere that heals any creature within range by 1d4 at the beginning of their turn for 1 minute. This ability cannot be used again until the next dawn. I think the way you'd say that, right, is you magically scatter stardust in the air, creating a 10-foot sphere of healing power. End statement. Any creature that starts its turn within the sphere gains 1d4 hit point, or regains 1d4 hit points. Or for the next minute, any creature which starts to turn in the sphere regains 1d4 hit points. Otherwise, perfect. I mean, you got it.
Yep. The effect works as it stands. This is all, again, convention and phrasing.
Also, as a note, you said you change it to any creature rather than just allies. We may have implied last time that, like, oh, but why not any creature? I think it's fine if you want to say friendly creatures that. I think that's okay. You can just stipulate it to friendly creatures if you'd like. There's no issue with that.
I wanted to talk about that too. I just forgot it in the moment. It's.
Can I start my turn there and move out? V-Bunny says, yeah, absolutely.
Legendary item. It's a powerful effect, but that's magic. Like, okay, yeah.
Pete, let it rip with Starfall.
Oh, this was really cool. I remember this now. Summon a shooting star dealing 5d6 fire damage and 5d6 force damage to everything within a 10-foot sphere. Additionally, all creatures within 20 feet must make a DC 15 Dex saving throw or be thrown 10 feet. This effect cannot be used again for a week. One thing that's thrown me off is the phrase thrown. I assume that's pushed backwards. Would probably be a better way of phrasing it. But other than that,
it would be,
I think
be pushed 10 feet away from the sphere.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Jeremy.
But otherwise, I mean, not too shabby. Again, it's you summon typically on items, but maybe which deals instead of dealing. You'd lowercase fire and force, but I guess you could say to everything. Normally it'd be to each creatures, but I guess there's nothing. I mean, if you want to smash buildings and other stuff, that makes sense. So everything's fine. Yeah, it's cool. Very cool. And of course, sword, the flavor text, beautiful.
Yep, absolutely. Flavor note that I kind of was just thinking, Grace of the Stars, Stardust, and Starfall. I almost want Grace of the Stars to be Stars Grace. So it's Stars Grace, Stardust, and Starfall all kind of have the same cadence to them. But that's a question of personal preference, and you got to follow your own heart for this.
V-Bunny was saying, if I'm small, wait, Bunny, I'm not sure what your idea is, but I think it doesn't matter if you're a small creature or a medium creature, you're gonna heal the same from Stardust. I don't know if there's any healing in the game that punishes small creatures.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean.
Let's keep walking through. What do we got next?
All right, we are at 11 o'clock, which is our time. But that's all of the ones that I thought we could really get into. So I want to talk about stuff now that people made in the workshop that wasn't stuff that I felt that we could really go over and review in a little bit, but I at least want to highlight it and mention that like it's there and what's there. Which first up, we had Uil the Shadow Fury Vampire and Traven the Shadow Skulker Vampire by V-Bunny. These were two, in many ways similar to some of the ones we looked at last week, huge stat blocks with a ton of stuff going on. They are pretty cool. A lot of the mechanics involve applying class features to a vampire chassis. In this case, I believe it was for the Shadow Skulker, for example, it was the what's the Ranger subclass?
Oh, the night. Crap.
The Gloomstalker.
Gloomstalker.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe it was a Gloomstalker vampire. Both of them were very cool. You have a huge stat block. I noticed that you did less skills than before, which that was the right choice. Maybe some of that is because it's less of a skilled class, but still, it's less skills. There was a cool mechanic that I wanted to point out in one of them that was it was an effect that I'd never seen on a monster before, but it was whenever they took radiant damage. It was called Radiant Mirror was the name of the effect, but whenever they took radiant damage, they dealt radiant damage in an area of effect around them, which I just thought was a cool idea. I've never seen anything like that, and I thought it could open up some interesting avenues in battling them. But Uwil the Shadow Fury Vampire and Traven the Shadow Skulker Vampire. If you're looking for a high-end vampire to throw into your games, check out what V-Bunny's got there. Maybe you'll find some inspiration from it.
Yeah, and it's hard for us to give a lot of feedback on those guys that are the huge stat block monsters, especially when they are pretty reasonable monsters, right? It's a monster out of the player's handbook that you've given class levels to as described in the Dungeon Master's Guide. But I would recommend, rather than using classes like the Gloomstalker or the Rogue or something like that, what might actually be a really easy way to handle that is looking at the Warrior, the Spellcaster, and the Expert sidekick options that exist, I believe, in the... Oh, God, what book was that released in? The Dragon of Icespire Peak, which... goodness, it was in one of the new starter sets.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it was in the new starter set. I would highly recommend taking a peek at those, because typically those are a lot simplified, and one of the issues with just applying straight up like the whole Bard chassis on a monster is there's so many features. It's cumbersome, it's hard to read, it's hard to use as a dungeon master. So if we were going to give any feedback on those guys, it would be to try and simplify the features, right? For example, if you're making a monster with a Bard thing and you get down to counter charm, just if it's not relevant to the monster, just get rid of it, right? If it's not fitting thematically.
You don't have to worry about giving them all the skills and stuff. I think a great way to go would just be to, oh, this person's a Bard. I'm going to just give them, like, for example, I'm just going to put Bardic Inspiration on them, or I'm going to pick and choose the things in the Bard chassis. And you don't have to, like, give them all the skills, give them all the proficiencies. Yeah. You can just give them, this is the one
couple
thing
of core
that
features.
I want. Yeah, for example, you mentioned the Shadow Fury, the Shadow Skulker, or the Shadow Monk for the Shadow Skulker Vampire. I know they have like the move through shadows feature. You can just give them that without some of the other stuff that you get from those subclasses. So that's a good way to go too.
Another, just as a more broader scope, it can be really frustrating for player characters to have to fight against other player character options, because player character options are not meant to fight against player characters. Like Stunning Strike that monks have, no monster is ever intended to have Stunning Strike. No monster is ever intended to have 20 key points, because a monster is expected to survive 3 rounds. That's the average lifespan of a monster in 5e. So I'd really be really careful about using those kind of things in your campaigns, because it could, a lot of the time I found it just ends in a lot of people having a rough time.
Yep, some work
just
a lot
not
better than
enjoying
others.
it.
I gave one multi-attack defense once, and I thought that worked well, but I gave them other Ranger features that didn't, and it's just some of it's experimenting with what works and what doesn't. But
just
anyway,
be careful with that stuff is, I guess, our long term.
Yeah, but that's about all we can do for you on those vampires. But hopefully that is helpful, and I enjoyed reading them when I went through them, V-Bunny. Next up, we have Winsler's Syllabarium Gauntlet, which was another one that's a little tough to review because it, for one thing, it incorporates a lot of D&D time specific lore, like a specific magic item canonical to a character in the land of D&D time that Frog has a lot of. These were made by Frog, you forgot one, by the way. But it is a gauntlet that lets you change a lot of the different words and spells. It's fun, it's goofy. Right at home in a D&D time campaign, or a silly campaign if you're running one. But check out Winsler's Syllabarium Gauntlet in the Workshop and Completed Works if you're interested in that.
And like Pete and I was saying, like Pete was saying, it's very hard for us when something gets so personal like that, or like Confectia, the other thing submitted, the other creation submitted by the Forgotten One. Very hard for us to give you feedback on something quite so personal. You know, things that are much broader scope and meant for a wider audience is a little easier to. That's like what we're targeting, right, with our Fantasy Labs.
But I believe Confectia is in completed works. That's one more to look at. It was Frog's. Well, canonically, that's Frog's patron in the Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time game that we run every Friday, and she has a lot of cool features. Frog, you got me with Whip of Cream. That's all. You got me. You got me. It made me laugh
cute
a lot.
ability names.
Yeah, a lot of cool flavor in that. So also check out Confectia as well.
Absolutely. And if you're new to Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time and you want some inspiration for characters, that's a really cool like. Confectia, even though it's an arch-fae kind of patron, is super like on point and on theme for the D&D Times Big Rocky Candy Mountains. So it might be something cool if you're looking for inspiration for a character that fits in the world. Check it out. See what cool inspiration you can find there.
Anyway, those are our kind of some of our thoughts. Everybody, thanks for being understanding about that. We appreciate it. Razia says, I'll go back and look at the Seasonal Viking again. Yeah, I checked out some of the Seasonal Viking stuff as well, Razia. And I'll say now, if you're interested in the Seasonal Viking, that's something that Razia put together. It was a Viking that was a Viking that was very like kind of jolly and had different abilities that related to different seasons. It was a barbarian subclass, if I remember correctly. Involved heavy armor use in some places. It is an interesting subclass. It was just also 7 pages long, and I knew we would not have time for it, especially on our tight schedule.
Oh yeah, very hard for us to go over like a 7-page document with a lot of strong feedback. Also, is just a note again. We'd love to know the context in which you're looking for feedback. If you're looking for feedback of like, I want to produce this and put it on the DMs Guild for people to use, I can tell you right there, 7 pages for a subclass is way too much. Way too much. You need to find a way to whittle that down and simplify what you're going for. But if it's for your own homebrew game, that might be perfectly fine, depending on your players and everything. And that's not something Pete and I can ever tell you, you know, this isn't right for your game, because D&D is inherently such a personal thing. And what's right for someone's game might not be right for someone else's game, might not be right for someone else's game, might be perfect for another person's game, you know, especially when you get to stuff that's that kind of detailed.
And V-Bunny was saying, nor any really, I just wanted to share it. That's good, very good to know. That's another thing that's great to know. If anyone ever puts anything in the workshop that you don't want us to talk about and that's not an important kind of component of it, and you just kind of want to just share something cool that you made, please let us know, and I will not include it on the list. I just assume that most stuff in the workshop and completed works is something that someone wants, you know, people to review and kind of go over more in depth. But if that's not the case, definitely let me know that in the workshop with some kind of note or text there.
And along those lines, right, if you have something like, I just want to show this off, I'm not really looking for feedback, that's real cool. You know, we'll talk about it on the stream a little bit, but you know, our main goal here in Fantasy Labs is to help people grow and become better at creating cool homebrew content. So we'll talk about it. You know, we'll say there's like we did today, really cool Ewell the Shadow Vampire and Traven the Shadow Skulker Vampire, right? That like is a cool thing to look at for inspiration or to use in your games. But we probably won't go much deeper than that.
And on the subject, I don't know if Amy Chibi is still hanging around. I took the moment to read your idea during the break. That actually might fall in this category a little bit too. You had mentioned this idea of a auspice, which was almost like a pseudo subclass idea that you'd put into your that sounds like you'd put maybe into your game or a home game. It seems a little setting dependent, and rather than, it's hard for us to rate this concept. I think it's a cool idea, but what I would like to see is if you wanted us to review it, some more of the actual executions. Like you mentioned that it grants people like skills and powers, but we'd want to see like what some of those skills and powers are for us to review it. But I think it's a cool idea, certainly.
And then along the same page, context of how you intend to use it, right? It's like, absolutely, this is from my home game, and I just wanted to, you know, I'm having trouble with this specific thing. That's super helpful for us to know. Or if you're like, well, I made this and I want to make it part of a a grander thing that I can put on, that I can share with people on Reddit or Twitter or wherever you spend your time, for them to use in their games, right? That's also very helpful for us to know. So again, context is super helpful. Thank you.
Indeed. And I think that is all for us for tonight. We came pretty close to the time. We did pretty good, Jeremy.
We were almost on time, guys. Never can be quite on time because that's the D&D time curse.
Such is the way.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for everyone hanging out in the chat right now. Thank you for everyone who shared their awesome stuff this week.
Yeah, really.
There's a lot of really cool concepts. And I don't know, I get a lot of inspiration just looking at that kind of stuff and making me like, well, crap, I want to make something now.
Yeah.
Like with Blood Deuce's ranged spell, spell cantrip, Gish cantrips. I hadn't even, how has that not passed through my head is kind of what I'm thinking. How have I not thought to do this? And of course, obviously Blood did. So thank you, Blood, for sharing it.
Yeah, Rozia's status condition of you ate too much and you get a debuff. I love that kind of stuff.
I love certain things like hungry, right? Because I love the concept of overland travel, and there's not a lot of we'll just go at half rations if you're trying to have survival and rations be part of your game. Well, how, right? Why does that matter? All right, we're going to half rations and it doesn't matter at all. Having those extra little things are cool, and I think could make for a very interesting time. I'd like an enemy, right? That just one of their regional actions or effects is just hunger. That just feels so cool.
Yeah,
it's
very cool.
I dig it. I dig it very much. But thank you for sharing again, everybody.
Thanks so much, Frog. I'm looking forward to the next Lich's Lair. So am I.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a lot of cleanup on the Pixie. I really like.
We haven't done a race yet on Lich's Lair.
Yeah, that's true. So that'll be a lot of fun as well.
That'll give us a deep dive on that. All the awesome flavor text in there too.
That's gonna do it for us. Again, thank you all so much. Tune in a week from today. There will be not Fantasy Labs, but a one-shot being run, I believe, by Crowley again. I don't think it's me. I think it's Crowley.
We'll figure it out.
If you want the Seasonal Viking to get into the Lich's Lair, you can message me about it, and we can chat about it. But we can absolutely make that happen as well at some point.
If anyone has anything that they're really excited about getting into Lich's Lair, do talk to Pete. Pete's your main contact for that.
Yep.
We're definitely not going to just pick stuff at random because that would be neat.
It would be rude.
We don't want to put anyone on the spot.
Buddy, Lich's Lair on my halfling sublace, the Burly Halfling. You're basically at a 5 out of 5 on that one.
Yeah, you're done.
Yeah, you did it already.
You survived.
There were some capitalization issues that you could have fixed. I remember there was a sentence that didn't start with a capital letter. So go back and change that.
That Lich will claim your soul for even the tiniest of transgression. No, it was excellent. Thank you for sharing that last week, everybody.